In 1992, Slovenia's GDP per capita was just $12,287 in purchasing power. Today, it's over $57,000, making it richer than Portugal, Croatia, and far ahead of most Eastern Europe countries. While many of its post-Yugoslav neighbors still struggle with corruption, weak institutions, or economic stagnation, Slovenia quietly transformed into a high-income, export-driven economy with one of the highest standards of living in the region. Despite having a population of just 2.1 million, Slovenia is a global leader in pharmaceuticals, green energy technologies, and high-tech manufacturing. Its largest company, Krka, exports generic drugs to over 70 countries. Industrial giants like Revoz, a Renault subsidiary, produce over 60,000 cars annually, contributing to a booming auto sector that accounts for over 20% of exports. Unemployment rate and government debt is below the EU average, and it maintains a budget deficit under 3%, meeting EU fiscal rules most member states normally miss. Its inflation in 2023 also remained well below the Eurozone average. So how did a tiny country with no oil, no massive population, and no financial center outperform much larger nations? This is how a country in the Slavic region is seriously becoming rich. Before Yugoslavia and socialism, Slovenia was already different. In the late 1800s, while much of Eastern Europe was still deeply agrarian, Slovenia was part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire, an empire that didn't just rule over it, but invested in it. Unlike other imperial subjects, Slovenians were given schools, roads, and even local self-government. They weren't treated like colonial labor, they were trained to be citizens, and critically, they were trusted to manage their own economy. At the time, Slovenia served a strategic role. It was Austria's only direct access to the sea. To move goods from the empire's heartland to the coast, everything passed through Slovenia, so it made sense for Vienna to invest. But those investments had a side effect. Slovenia developed not just infrastructure, but capacity, bureaucrats, engineers, and economists. By the early 20th century, Slovenia had its own university, its own industrial centers, and a relatively literate population. These may sound like basic benchmarks today, but in the 1920s, they put Slovenia decades ahead of its Balkan neighbors. Then came the collapse of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. Slovenia joined the newly formed Yugoslavia, a nation stitched together from linguistic cousins and political strangers. And while Yugoslavia was poor, rural, and fragile, Slovenia was undisputedly the most economically sophisticated in the region. So when the world slid into the Great Depression and then into war, Slovenia didn't start from zero. It already had a generation trained to build things: ports, power lines, railroads, and eventually, policy. This was the first advantage. Slovenia learned how to run itself long before it had to. And that advantage would quietly compound, especially when the region's next political experiment of socialism began. In 1945, Europe was rubble, and Yugoslavia, battered, poor, and deeply divided, declared itself a new socialist federation. 6 republics, 1 ideology. And within them, Slovenia was still the quiet overachiever. But unlike the Soviet satellites in Eastern Europe, Yugoslavia wasn't a puppet state. Its communist resistance had fought off the Nazis largely on its own, and that mattered. Because it meant Yugoslavia chose socialism on its own terms, and eventually, so did Slovenia. At first, it mimicked the Soviet model: strict 5-year plans, nationalized industries, price controls, and central economic command. Everything was planned. Nothing was competitive. It was a disaster. Factories that failed were bailed out. Innovations were ignored. Quality collapsed. By the early 1950s, the system was falling apart, and Yugoslavia faced a choice: double down or try something new. They chose the latter. And with it came one of the most radical economic experiments of the Cold War: Entertitoism, or as some call it, socialism with a brain. Yugoslavia decentralized not just politically, but economically. Instead of one government managing everything, each republic got to manage its own economy. And even within those republics, power was pushed further down into the hands of the workers themselves. This wasn't Soviet-style communism. It was worker self-management. Factories were run by worker councils, not bureaucrats in the capital. These councils elected managers, made business decisions, and even shared in the profits. If the factory succeeded, so did the workers. If it failed, it shut down. No more bailouts, no more guaranteed mediocrity, and no one ran this system better than Slovenia. Why? Because Slovenia already had the two ingredients socialism rarely came with: competent governance and good investments. While other regions funneled money into prestige projects or corrupt cronies, Slovenia built for the future by investing in ports, railways, and export-oriented industries. It created vocational schools, modern factories, and reliable supply chains. One pivotal example was the port of Koper. In 1957, Slovenia made a quiet but transformative decision. It poured investment into a modest Adriatic harbour called Koper. At the time, it was an afterthought, overshadowed by larger ports in Trieste and Rijeka. But Slovenia saw an opportunity. During the Cold War, few nations could trade freely with both East and West. Slovenia, with its neutrality and geography, could trade as well. By building up Koper and connecting it by rail to Central Europe, Slovenia became a trade bridge between two hostile worlds. Western goods flowed in, Eastern goods flowed out. And as other socialist countries isolated themselves, Slovenia opened up to ships, to tourists, to foreign investment. By the 1960s, Koper was moving hundreds of thousands of tons of cargo each year. And Slovenia wasn't just moving goods, it was moving ahead. Its economy became export-oriented, globally connected, and unusually efficient for a socialist state. The port of Koper was more than infrastructure. It was a strategy. It proved that Slovenia didn't just survive socialism, it learned how to win with it. And now, the numbers are starting to show it. By the late 1950s, Slovenia wasn't just surviving, it was thriving. While much of socialist Eastern Europe stagnated, Slovenia quietly posted some of the strongest growth rates in the world. Between 1955 and 1985, Yugoslavia's economy grew at an average of 6% per year, and Slovenia led the pack. That kind of sustained growth was just so rare for a socialist state, period. Slovenia was outpacing countries like Portugal, South Africa, and even parts of Western Europe. In 1960, Slovenians and South Africans were equally wealthy. By 1990, Slovenians were 2.5 times richer. GDP per capita climbed from around $4,000 in the early 60s to nearly $12,000 by the end of the 80s, approaching Western European levels. And all of this was done without capitalism. No stock market, no private banks, and no foreign billionaires. Just worker-run factories, state-owned utilities, and disciplined public investment. Slovenia was proving that a mixed, pragmatic form of socialism, lean, adaptive, export-driven, could deliver first-world prosperity. And this wasn't just luck. It was the result of choices, smart ones, on trade, on infrastructure, and on who got to run the economy. Slovenia and Serbia shared the same system, same ideology, same federation, same 5-year plans. Yet, by the 1980s, Slovenia was 6 times richer than Kosovo, and nearly twice as rich as Serbia. So what made the difference? First, governance. Slovenia inherited strong institutions from the Austro-Hungarian Empire, local governments, schools, and civil service. In contrast, Serbia's governance was more centralized and less efficient. Secondly, corruption. Slovenia invested in things that worked like ports, railroads, manufacturing. Many southern republicans spent on political prestige or funneled money into failing state projects. Third, bankruptcies. While most socialist states feared letting businesses fail, Slovenia allowed underperforming factories to shut down, making room for more efficient ones to grow. Fourth, foreign trade. Slovenia's proximity to Italy and Austria made it the gateway to Western Europe. It embraced this, opening up to tourism, logistics, and cross-border commerce. And finally, competence. Slovenia had engineers, economists, and planners who knew how to turn ideas into outcomes. Same system, different results. Slovenia didn't reject socialism, it just ran it better. By 1991, Slovenia had already built the foundation of a developed economy. So, when Yugoslavia collapsed, Slovenia didn't need to be rescued, it just needed to adapt. While other ex-communist countries fell into chaos, Slovenia moved quickly and quietly. It restructured banks, opened markets, and joined the European Union by 2004. By 2007, it adopted the euro. But here's what made Slovenia different. It embraced capitalism without abandoning its social values. Healthcare remained universal. Education stayed free. Strategic sectors like energy and telecoms remained partly state-owned. Workers retained strong protections, and inequality remained among the lowest in Europe. Slovenia didn't sell off its economy in a fire sale. It transitioned on its own terms, combining the best of free markets with the discipline of its socialist past. While countries like Russia faced oligarchy and collapse, Slovenia became a stable, high-trust economy that foreign investors respected and citizens believed in. The system changed, but the mindset, efficient, careful, pragmatic, stayed the same. Today, Slovenia is one of the richest countries in Central Europe and one of its quietest success stories. Its GDP per capita, PPP, is around $52,000, ahead of its big neighboring countries. It ranks high on global indexes for education, healthcare, life expectancy, and social equality. Unemployment is low. Public debt is manageable. Exports account for more than 80% of GDP, driven by high-value manufacturing cars, pharmaceuticals, and electronics. This isn't a flashy economy. There's no oil, no megacities, no billionaire tech founders. But that's the point. Slovenia didn't get rich on hype, it got rich on competence. Its model isn't perfect. It still faces challenges: an aging population, brain drain, and slow innovation in tech. But by most metrics, Slovenia is not just doing fine. It's outperforming expectations at nearly every level. While other countries swing between crisis and reform, Slovenia offers something rare: consistency. It may be small and often overlooked, but in a world of volatility, Slovenia's quiet wealth is its own kind of power. Slovenia did not make it through capitalism, at least not at first. It became rich and stable under socialism. A version of socialism that rewarded efficiency, embraced trade, and trusted workers to run their own enterprises. Later, it transitioned to capitalism, not by copying the West, but by protecting the best parts of what it already had: healthcare, education, and social trust. In a world where economic debates are loud, ideological, and often toxic, Slovenia offers a rare example of balance. A small country that didn't chase extremes, but beat the odds by staying boring, practical, and quietly excellent.